Hi, I'm disabled. Did you mean differently abled? Handy capable. A warrior. Dislabeled. Person of abilities that are less and also not good. Disabled. Hindered. Challenged. Enabled. Special needs. I know, you're a superhero. Just disabled's fine, it's not a dirty word.
What happened if everybody faked autism?
Hi, I have autism. Okay. So what do I get? Well, you could get some noise-canceling headphones, more alone time. You could get some notification before a big change happens. I'm not really interested in any of that. What about attention? Can I get attention? Yeah, I mean, you could get people invalidating your experience, generally with a lot of rage, or you could have pity and infantilization. Is that the kind of attention you're looking for? Well, that doesn't sound fun at all. What about like accommodations, extra support, medication? Yeah, you're gonna need a formal diagnosis for that. Do you have that? Oh, no, I don't have that. What about just like community, people who really understand me? Yeah, sure, you could be with autistic people talking about experiences that you also experience. Yeah, that actually doesn't sound like fun because I'm faking autism for some reason.
Okay, if you're trans femme, if you're a trans girl, you should know that you're only really allowed 3 hobbies. I'm gonna go through them now. The first hobby, Warhammer 40k. Self-explanatory, I'm not gonna get into it. The second hobby is gaming. You can be a gamer. And the third and final hobby is depression. Those are the 3 hobbies that you're allowed. Pick 1 or 2 and just throw all your other hobbies away. No trans.
I think you're ready to live in a voluntary anarchist community or society where people are free to choose to do the right thing and choose to do the right thing without rules telling them to do that. Well, there's a simple test to see whether or not you are. And that is, when was the last time you returned your shopping cart to the stall where you're supposed to return it to? Nothing happens if you don't, but it's the expectation. It's very clear that that's the expectation, and you're choosing to protect other people and their carts from getting dings or not. So when was the last time you did that? If it's every time, you're probably ready. But there are, of course, exceptions to every rule.
I am an anarchist. Every once in a while on this app, I make a video about politics, and I don't do that super often, partially because I just don't feel like dealing with it. Because, and this is true, it's impossible to say something about politics without everybody assuming that you have the worst of intentions. Or often I just get people thinking that I've never had a critical thought in my life. Which is, I mean, that's kind of true. It's really not. I do a lot of thinking. I'm an anarchist. It's what I would use to label myself if I had to. I don't want to get into the specifics of the flavor of anarchist that I am, but it's the easiest thing to use to describe myself. I am critical of the state. Now, that doesn't mean that I want absolute chaos to reign over the world. I'm not Zahir, although we have the same hair. And further, I'm no revolutionary. I'm no political activist. I know where I stand. I'm not an expert in those things, and I know well enough to not pretend to be an expert in those things. Will I talk about politics? Sure, yeah, I'm a human being. I'm affected by politics, but I'm no political activist, and I don't have the same level of networking and organizational prowess as some people definitely have. And so it would be disingenuous of me to pretend to have all of the answers or craft some narrative that I'm this high-minded political thinker. I do a lot of thinking about what I want from the world, and I have my North Star. But in practice, I know that I'm not about to spark a revolution, but I would join yours. Anyway, it is entirely possible to have a strongly held North Star, the direction that you want to be moving in, and you are not always going to be moving in that exact direction. Sometimes you gotta navigate around obstacles, or even take a few steps backwards to get perspective so that you can better make your path towards where you want to be going. Where I want to be going is an equitable world where we can work together in collaboration and are not being held down by an oppressive state that hasn't proven its right to be an authority. I know that we're probably not going to reach the North Star vision that I have for the world by the end of my life, and that's fine. I'm blazing a path. I'm trying to find my own way through all this mess. And if along the way I can reach out to a few new people and learn a few things and make some people laugh and have a wonderful relationship and hug my dog, like, there's more to life than just having a complete vision and executing on it. And so, yes, I am ludicrously far left. I identify as an anarchist, but sometimes it's chill to talk about socialist policies and work with communists and get a better understanding of what specifically I want. And it's okay for that to change. Because contrary to popular belief, if you're just some random person, you don't need to make sense out of stuff in your head. You can just have vague concepts and glue them together how you see fit. Take care and be well. But also, the next time that somebody comments that I must have just discovered socialism, I'm going to lose my mind.
This video is going to show you how the world is actually doing better than ever. Nearly half of all children in the world were dying before their 5th birthday in the year 1800, and now that is less than 5%. You can see here that only 10% of adults in the year 1800 could read and write, and now that number is almost 90. 100 years ago, basically nothing was protected on Earth, and now almost 15% of the entire Earth is protected by national parks. Smoke particles in the air have gone down by over half. In just 35 years, the share of people with water has gone up 30%. Equal rights for women has become the standard in just a little over a century. Battle deaths per 100,000 people has gone down quite a lot. This shows a drastic improvement of how much oil is actually being spilled into the ocean. Deaths from disasters are way down. And world hunger is constantly on the downfall. We still have a lot of work to do, but the world is not all that bad. Scrolling on social media or watching the news can make it really hard sometimes to feel like anything in the world is actually going right. But when we're able to just take a breath, take a moment, and try and see things from a different perspective, there's a lot of good in the world to see, and we don't have a lot of time on Earth to enjoy it.
Some good news that you probably missed. Switzerland is about to test out solar panels that sit on train tracks. They roll out like a carpet and make use of currently unused space. If they're successful, they could produce enough clean energy to power millions of homes, and that's just from Switzerland's rail network. An innovative new type of floating wind turbine generated power for the first time. It's called the X30, and it's apparently more efficient than other floating turbines, but still takes advantage of the strong winds and higher power in the deep sea. And Europe now has its first protected wild river national park. It's called the Vjosa River, which flows between Greece and Albania, and it's home to thousands of animal and plant species. So it's a vital haven for biodiversity that's now getting protected.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني
This is literally so correct, and like you think that you did something, but you're just right. We don't blame the Jewish people for our problems. We do blame the CIA, because the CIA do be having conspiracies. Do you think the CIA is innocent, dude?
If you're a leftist who's doing any sort of organizing work, I need you to listen to this message, and I'm gonna try to say it in the nicest way that I possibly can. Nobody wants to read theory. I cannot tell you how many leftists, socialists, communists I've seen on the ground with booths and flyers and handouts, and when you ask them what they're doing, they'll be like, oh, well, we're gonna be reading Trotsky tomorrow. Come out and, read it with us. Babe, nobody wants to do that. Like, I just see a lot of baby socialists who think that reading theory is somehow gonna, motivate and catapult people into action. It's not, babe. We're living in a different world. If you want to motivate people into political action, start a mutual aid group or join a mutual aid group. Have a community potluck. Go clean up trash around your community. Literally do anything else but read a 100-year-old book.
Left-wing politics in my small-town bar with people mostly whose idea of a leftist is the actual devil. So we were talking about workers owning the means of production when somebody made an interesting point. They're like, here you are working your ass off at this bar. Do you really want to split your paycheck with a person who's panhandling outside and doing no work? It's an interesting point because it's similar to working for, say, $20 an hour. In that hour, I produce $100 of value for the company. I take my $20 and then I hand out The other $80 that I created to a small group of wealthy owners who were not there, did none of the work, and had no part in creating the $100 of value, other than just owning the means of production. Now, a lot of people will say right-wingers are just too far gone, it's not worth it, and I hear that point, it's true for a lot of folks, but a simple shift in perspective makes people think.
I was pretty sure you'd sleep in and forget to meet me this morning.
Wouldn't have forgotten if I was sleeping with you.
But look at this, Jesus, look at this outfit.
When I was a kid, hopefully this isn't happening anymore, but I know it is. When I was a kid, I was taught a bunch of nonsensical things. Like, for example, that everybody thought the world was flat. Columbus was a super genius. He figured out it was a sphere. He went west, discovered the Americas. Like, at every level, that's just wrong. First of all, the ancient Egyptians discovered the earth was a sphere 2,600 years ago, 2,100 years before Columbus. Actually, let me rephrase what I said. I said they discovered the earth was a sphere. They proved the earth was a sphere. Pretty much everybody knew the earth was a sphere before that. It's just nobody could prove it until the ancient Egyptians sent a fleet of ships around Africa, and they completely circumnavigated Africa. And what they noticed 2,600 years ago is as they were traveling south, the sun's position moved from being in the southern sky directly overhead to the northern sky. And the constellations changed to constellations they'd never seen before. And then as they came around the southern tip of Africa and started heading north, the sun slowly moved from the northern sky or directly overhead back to the southern sky, and their old constellations returned, and they went, there's literally only one shape that could accommodate that experience. The earth is clearly a sphere. Done. So then that begs the question, why are we having this silly conversation about a guy figuring this out 2,100 years later? Now, obviously, one of the problems is Egyptians are brown, but there's also something else that's weird about this story. So, about 5 centuries after the Egyptians prove the earth is a sphere, there's a guy named Eratosthenes who's at the Great Library. And he's reading random stuff. The Great Library is in Alexandria, Egypt. He's reading random stuff, and one of the things he comes across is an account of a guy in Aswan. Aswan is the southernmost Egyptian city, not village. There are villages further south, but it's this last major city. And the guy in Aswan says, I happened to be there on the longest day of the year, and I happened to look into a well, and I noticed it cast no shadow. The wall of the well cast no shadow. And that's all he did. He just made the observation. Eratosthenes goes, oh, this is insane, this is incredible. Because he realizes he now has an angle. And he's read Euclid, all he needs is angle, side, angle. He's now got the triangle. Once he has angle, side, angle, he can do 2 things effectively. One, calculate the size of the earth, or, if he wanted to, calculate the distance to the sun. And so he hires a guy to walk from Alexandria to Aswan, and then he waits until the longest day of the year. He runs over to a well, looks into it, and he sees a shadow. He measures the angle on the shadow. He's now got angle. Now he just needs the length to Aswan. The guy walks to Aswan. He pays him for the trip. The guy tells him how many steps it was. And he's got a problem, right? It's not a straight road, and the earth is curved because it's a sphere. And he figures out a way to weed out all that error. And then he makes his calculation, what he thinks the length going through the planet would be from Aswan to Alexandria. And he nailed the Earth's size with 1% error. He was 99% right. Can you imagine? 21 centuries ago, somebody being able to make a calculation that was that accurate, having a guy walk from one city to the other. Like Eratosthenes was a genius, there's no 2 ways about it. They later on tried to apply this to the distance of the sun. They got a giant number, and they went, that's obviously wrong, and they dismissed it. But it wasn't wrong. It really is a giant number. They just couldn't comprehend that it could possibly be that far. But that's what they did. They figured out the size of the Earth. What Columbus does is he rejects the size of the Earth. Think about it. When he goes to Isabella to sell her on this scheme of going west to get to Japan and China, the scheme means that Japan and China would be where North America is. The only way that could be true is if the east-west distance of North America was missing and the east-west distance of the Pacific Ocean was missing. Right? For Japan and China to be where North America is, there can't be a Pacific Ocean or a North America. In other words, Columbus believed the Earth was roughly half the surface area that is. In other words, he was wrong about the Earth, not right about the Earth. And, just to make things funnier, he also thought the Earth was pear-shaped. He believed that the Garden of Eden would be by its nature very close to heaven. So as a result, where God put the Garden of Eden, the Earth would bulge up. So it was more of a pear shape than a sphere. In other words, it wasn't that Columbus was a genius and he got it right. He was an idiot and he got it wrong. And that's what the Portuguese were telling him. When he went to the Portuguese first, he said, if we go west, we'll be there. The Portuguese are like, you're an idiot. The distance is too great, you'll never make it. We don't have a ship that can cross the east-west distance of the Atlantic, the east-west distance of North America, and the east-west distance of the Pacific. You'll get a third of the way, you'll run out of fresh water and food. Your men will mutiny a sixth of the way because they won't want to go the trip because they'll realize it's a suicide mission. And so they tell him no. He goes to Isabella. Isabella does the math. She's like, if he's right, I'm going to be filthy rich. If he's wrong, I lose 3 ships. Big deal. So she sends him on a suicide, what everybody believes is a suicide mission. Because everybody knows the size of the Earth. We've known the size of the Earth by that point for 1,600 years.
It's because I think it should be a bigger story, and I don't think it's going to get covered.
Okay.
All right, so can I explain it to you?
Yeah.
And then you can just tell me if I sound crazy.
Okay.
Because I'm going to sound crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. 99% of the phones in the world are being tracked by every single government through push notifications. And the United States government has a gag order on the 2 largest phone companies through their operating systems to make sure that no one knows about it. And it was just confirmed by a letter via the chairman of the Committee on Finance in the Senate.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So you're saying that all the governments?
So this is how he words it. All right,
Okay.
Senator Ron Wyden, in a letter to the Attorney General, he states that last year his office got a tip, that foreign governments were reaching out to Google and Apple. Now that's important because Android phones make up 70% of every operating system in the world.
All right.
On every phone.
Okay.
The other 29% is Apple.
Yeah.
Both of those companies were being reached out to by foreign governments who were requesting push notification data.
Push notification data?
So you know when somebody sends you a text?
Yeah.
Okay, and you get that little thing that pops up at the top of the screen?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you like this thing. Or like Amazon sends you a little bing. It's like, just so you know, Magneto helmets are 30% off. And then you click the button and buy.
I cannot believe you bought that Magneto
Okay,
helmet.
ignore this. The governments are tracking us, okay?
All right.
I will put it on so they don't hear my thoughts. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you get that, that's a push notification.
Yeah.
Okay? But that doesn't come directly from your app. That, through these services, goes from the app to a cloud server.
Okay.
And then it goes to your phone.
All right.
So these governments are subpoena and requesting the information from the cloud server. Not from your phone, not from the app, but from Google and from Apple. And so these governments, we don't know what governments, it just says in the letter, foreign countries are reaching out and collecting this data. Now, the assumption being ones that the United States has security partnerships with throughout the world.
Maybe.
But also maybe the United States government as well. Because when his office reached out and were like, we want more information about this, both Google and Apple stated to the senator, who is the chairman of the Committee on Finance, he has the clearance. We can't tell you because we're under a gag order by the United States government. So this senator is asking the attorney general, hey, lift the gag order and let people know if they're being surveilled through the push notifications. Because those push notifications could have things like in a text, who the text came from, maybe like a little bit of the preview of the body of the text, maybe other metadata in there, like where the text was being sent from or other things, like when you drop a pin to tell someone your location, and it tells you in the push notification, tons of information could be up there.
Yeah.
And like, this just came out, but I'm already seeing it like not getting any traction anywhere.
Why not?
Well, because Apple and Google pay a lot in advertising, and they also run the algorithms that track of how people find out information.
Okay, yeah, so they're not going to want this to get out.
Yeah, and so they're just going to be like, maybe it'll just go away.
So should we get tinfoil and make tinfoil hats?
No, I bought a Magneto helmet.
I know you bought a
That way they
Magneto
can't
helmet.
read my push notifications.
I don't think it's going to work.
I think I couldn't hurt.